2, 1. Okay. Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Liza, and I'm doing 12 days of Vlogmas. And we're doing another sit-down video today about a tough subject. And I am going to do my best to not sob through this entire video. I wanted to talk today about grief, specifically grief around the holidays. I heard this metaphor once equating grief to a box with a button in it and a ball. And the ball is bouncing around in the box and it's hitting the button. And every time it hits the button, the grief comes flooding in. And some days the ball is really big and just leaning on that button. And sometimes the ball is smaller and bouncing around and only hitting the button every now and then. And that really feels like the perfect way to describe my experience with grief. Unfortunately for my little family, we have experienced a lot of deaths. Both of my husband's parents are dead, and my father is dead. All three of these people, it's too soon to get emotional. Hold on. All three of these people died too soon and very suddenly. And it sucks. And I like to think that I'm a fairly happy, bubbly person. And while I think that is good and something I do like about myself, it also means that I have a little bit more trouble dealing with feelings of sadness. I don't think anybody wants to be sad, obviously, but I find myself feeling kind of terrified of those kinds of feelings. And I know that for me, that ball in that box gets exponentially bigger around the holidays. If only just because that's the time when you're meant to be with family and you're meant to see these people. So the holidays are just a stark reminder that they're not here. It has been just short of a decade since my dad died. And sometimes I feel like it's easier, and sometimes it feels like it just happened yesterday, which I think is pretty normal. I think there's an expectation maybe that we put on ourselves to get over it. Like, oh, I should be past this by now. But again, the ball in the box with a button. I don't think it will ever feel okay that these people are gone, but we do have to find a way to function, right? Like I said, I think that I'm a pretty happy, bubbly person, and I find feelings like sadness or anger tough, which is unfortunate, because I do think that one of the best ways to deal with grief, especially around the holidays, is to think about the person that you miss and to find a way to honor them. And there's just no way to do that without feeling the sadness and the anger that they're not here. So I guess maybe in a little bit of a selfish way, I wanted to make this video to talk about my dad a little bit. Because the thing about my dad is that he was a host. And never was that more apparent than around the holidays. He liked having his people around him. He loved his gaggle of grandchildren so much. And he never got to meet Sydney. He'll never get to meet this little one. And that is devastating. Because he was a good dad. On the surface, it may not have looked like he and I had a ton in common. I lovingly describe him as a computer nerd, because that's what he was. He had a PhD in computer sciences. And when I was a kid, if someone asked me what my dad did, I would say he was a computer doctor. He programmed things and invented things. And when he got older, wore these bifocal glasses that made him look like a nutty professor. He was really, really smart and truly loved working. But he also loved the arts and music, and that is where we came together. He was silly and goofy and very protective of his kids and his family, but not in an overbearing way. So he was a good dad, but he was a great grandpa. All of that silliness, goofiness got heightened around his grandchildren. He loved babies and little ones. I have a great memory of Ella being a toddler, and my dad crouched down to her level holding a handful of ice cubes because she wanted to play with the ice cubes, but they were too cold for her to hold on to, so he just cupped them in his hands. And it's such a silly thing, but I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, his hands must be freezing. Like, he doesn't have to, she's got plenty of toys. She doesn't need to play with these ice cubes. But he did not care, did not mind, just crouched down, holding ice cubes for my toddler to play with. He and my mother loved to host. They would host a Christmas Day brunch almost every year. For years before that, they would host a big Christmas party. And they were these big bashes. And I just have great memories of him laughing and telling stories and holding court a little bit. He would give a toast at Christmas dinner, just talking about how happy he was that we were all together. He would throw the wrapping paper from the gifts into the fire, even when we told him that he shouldn't do that because there's foil bits on the paper. He would put the bows from the presents on his head or other people's heads. He always carved the roast beast and sat at the head of the table. He had this music box that I think he bought on a trip to Italy. He carried that home in his lap on the plane. He just really loved it. It's like this very old, wind up wooden music box. And he loved that thing. My mom has a lot of antiques, a lot of antique furniture and paintings and things like that that belong to both her family and my dad's family. She really loves them. And I'm not much of an antique person. So when she kind of said, oh, if there's anything that you want after I'm gone, make sure you go around and kind of mark it or make it known. And, she said this to me and all of my siblings. And I said, the only thing I might want is that music box. And she actually gave it to me recently. She's still with us. So now I have it in my house. I know that for me, and I think this is true for a lot of people, when you lose someone that you love, one of the big fears is that you'll forget what they looked like and what they felt like and what they sound like. And the best way that I found to combat that is to remember him as much as I can, especially this time of year. Going home for Christmas is still really hard because I'll walk into my childhood home and be immediately hit with this wave of sadness. And for a split second, I can't remember why. But when I do remember why, and I do remember that it's because a big part is missing, a big part of the joy is missing, I think about how happy he would be to see us all there together, celebrating and missing him. So I hope that if you are missing someone and it's feeling especially hard right now, I hope that you know that you are not alone. I hope you know that it's okay to be sad right now. And I hope that you are able to think about that person and remember them and sit with the sad for a minute and give it its due. And then push through to the joy.